The only thing we can be sure of about the future is that it will be absolutely fantastic. So, if what I say now seems to you to be very reasonable, then I'll have failed completely. Only if what I tell you appears absolutely unbelievable have we any chance of visualizing the future as it really will happen.
Hello, and welcome to Arthur C. Clarke Presents MetaFUTURES, an exploration of what the metaverse is and what it may mean for the world to come. I'm your host, Patrick Coleman, and along with the Arthur C. Clarke Center for Human Imagination and the Origami Air Co., we're very excited to have you with us as we explore the limits of the possible when it comes to the metaverse. To begin our journey, if you want to follow me outside, we're going to get on an airship to our first destination.
I hope you had a good flight. Hello and welcome to Afterville Archives. We are so glad you could make it. I am Fidget, the director of the Afterville Gallery, Library, Archives, and Museum Space. When I'm not in Afterville, I'm a technical services librarian for LA County Library, project managing a digital archives project. You can also find me proctoring courses in the Rutgers SC&I Digital Asset Management Professional Certificate Program. Before we get started, I wanted to point out that here with me today are two highly regarded guests. Allow me to introduce you to Tay or Jordan Taylor, who is my partner in crime in library and information science. We were together in library grad school, and who is the senior editor at Central Bank Payment News. In Jordan's role as advisor to my residency in the archives, his focus is in audio research, production, and curation. Hello, Jordan. Thank you for being here today.
Dione, it's a privilege to be here, and thanks for having me. I look forward to spending this hour with you.
Outstanding. Thank you. Okay, and standing over here next to me on my other side is my dear friend and colleague, Michaela Ullmann. Michaela is the Exile Studies Librarian and Instruction Coordinator for Special Collections at USC Libraries. She also teaches critical librarianship through the California Rare Book School at UCLA. In Meek's role as advisor to my residency in the archives, her focus is in critical librarianship and instructional design. Hello, Michaela. Thank you also to you for being here today.
Hi, Dione, and hi, everybody. I'm so excited to be here.
Oh, awesome. Okay, so you may have been wondering what you might find behind that big door at the back of the Chinook Community Center here in Afterville. I bet you never thought it would be a true operational archive facility. Well, surprise. Afterville Archives, including all Afterville Gallery, Library, Archive, and Museum spaces, sometimes referred to as GLAM or DAM, is an independent agency created in 2028 to identify, protect, preserve, and make publicly available the historically valuable documents of their Afterville community residing inside AltSpace VR. Afterville Archives manages the community archives, administers the library, operates the museum and gallery spaces, conducts education and public programs, and provides oversight of Afterville's GLAM-wide records management activities. Okay, so I know that was a mouthful, but to put it plainly, we are an actual in-VR archive with an accessible online digital collection, and we produce exhibits and programming throughout the year. We are publicly accessible as of today, yay! And our doors are always open. The primary scope of the archive's collections includes the Pioneer Collection from 2028 and all calendar events that have occurred here since that time. So let's take a quick tour. We may move quickly now, but I invite you to return to the archives to browse at your leisure at any time. So if you look over here to the left, the gallery for the Pioneer Collection is found here on level 1. It documents the world build process Origami Air Company used to walk the pioneers through the decisions required to form a viable community. It all started when the pioneers were issued a ticket to board the OAS Earthrise in July 2028. They were a group of strangers who had survived the pandemic. Not many did. And they were invited by the Origami crew to imagine a future together in a new community of their own design, somewhere in Cascadia in the Pacific Northwest. Here along the outer wall on row 1, you see the faces of humans held in quarantine in the global pandemic of 2020. On the same wall, you see avatars embodied in identity, imagining a new beginning and a new life in a community built by them. You also see a map of North America showing where exactly these folks each sat down to their computer or their VR headset to see where the journey might take them. Every decision documented in the living archive captured along the way. When the pioneers boarded the airship, they were presented with an idea to imagine what's next. And if we were having a difficult time doing so, we were not alone. The Origami crew was there to help. Quickly, the pioneers became familiar with the OAS crew and their fellow pioneers. Each week, 9Key, Tilt, Amy, Max, and the many advisors came together to review their options, make decisions, witness the progress, form bonds, and, most importantly, continue to imagine. Now, if you go between rows 2 and 3, the gallery displays the pioneers' hopes and dreams for a better future together in Afterville. The far end of the row represents weekly work orders submitted to the crew, while the opposite wall displays images captured on the Earthrise of the information sharing and decision-making process. Whereas rows 3 to 4 celebrate the fruition of a collective world-building vision and those persons and organizations who made it all possible. So what do you say? Why don't we all head on up to level 2, where I'll show you the archive stacks where collection artifacts from Blockdown are housed. Let's go, guys. Okay, as soon as you get to level 2, you can find evidence of artifacts found from what was left behind in the community that came before us, Blockdown. It was very important to the Afterville pioneers that they honor these folks who used to make their livelihood here in this small logging town. Soon to come in this space are representations of those early settlers and workers of the trees. What is here now is just a small collection of weathered logging tools, captured images, letters, and postcards. With each new development in Afterville, our archaeologists make new discoveries. So please visit us from time to time to see how our collections have grown. Right here where I'm standing, these shelves near me hold the ephemera and artifacts from all events which have taken place since the Afterville settlement was formed. There are materials from our annual Ghosts of Afterville storytelling event, our spring market, and a direct link to the narrative capture of the Fire of 29, a fire that nearly destroyed our Grove of the Matriarchs and forced us to address a growing threat derived from increasing global warming. All right, then why don't we go on ahead and head up to level 3. When you make it to the top of the stairs, please make a left, practically a U-turn to our education space under the realistic willow tree. Looks like most of you have made it. When it came time to build this archive, and specifically this education space, we made every effort to peer through the lens of equity, inclusion, accessibility, and decolonization. And to best approach this area of critical librarianship, I called upon my friend and mentor, Michaela Ullmann, who knows the subject well. Again, thank you, Michaela, for taking the time to have a quick chat with us today.
Of course, my pleasure. My pleasure, Dione.
Absolutely. Okay, so I wonder, Michaela, do you think that you could speak to how important it is that a library, archive, and education space present itself through the lens of decolonization?
Of course. So I work in a special collections department, and special collections and archives departments have been created by mostly you know white, oftentimes men, and certainly very privileged people. So the spaces that these collections live in today often represent this very privileged perspective. And they also mostly represent Western culture, very white culture, and for many years now, we've been looking at ways to, change that, to bring in many more diverse perspectives. Um, and for that, the spaces that when we now have an opportunity like you to build a new space, we certainly have to take this into account to make sure that everybody is welcome, because that wasn't always the situation, and we want to make sure that everybody feels represented, that everybody feels included, and that also everybody's perspective is represented in one way or another. There's still like so many archival silences, and again, like very unwelcoming spaces. So I'm very thrilled that you're at the opportunity that you are able to build this very inclusive space.
Yeah, it's really amazing to be able to build an archive from the bottom up versus redefining an archive space, which might be a little bit more complicated. And I remember being absolutely fascinated by the idea. I didn't realize that people didn't always feel comfortable in the archive space, that it wasn't welcome to them. You hear so much about people's ideology of what a library and archive is, and so it's just this different perspective that I'm so grateful that I've had the opportunity to learn more about. So what I'd like to share now is that recently I invited Michaela to reimagine the Feuchtwanger Memorial Library inside special collections at USC Libraries as a decolonized space. I presented to her the idea that she had been granted quite a large budget where anything was possible and she could make it whatever she wanted. Michaela, could you please share with us the elements of that space that you think are important and why?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if I had the opportunity and that unlimited budget, it would be wonderful to have a blank canvas, a space that doesn't have busts and statues, of people who were very privileged, but create be a more welcoming space. Um, there's many ways to do this. There's also being more welcoming also means addressing people with different abilities. There's lots of invisible disabilities that we want to address. We now teach in those spaces quite a lot, so we want to have flexible, movable furniture that can address a lot of different scenarios and
Right.
events, but also make people comfortable. Um, there is like I said, I mean, now that we have the technology, and that also everybody got so adjusted to being on Zoom and
Yeah.
virtual reality, we want to have screens and technology that lets us use that we can bring in people if they can't come in, or so that really be inclusive, really be welcoming, and not be off-putting. And like maybe a last word is also like the terminology we use. Why do we use special collections? Let's
Right.
try to be a little bit more critical about the terminology we use. Also, many of our exhibit spaces or so on use the term treasure. What's a treasure and whose treasure is it? So
Mm.
I think it's important to think through these ideas in order to create really welcoming spaces.
Oh, that's outstanding. Okay, yeah. So I was thinking a little bit too, even about like, what I traditionally think of is this sort of dark wood, velvety curtain, plush dark chairs, great big old books. And I know that what we've done, and what a lot of what I've learned about critical librarianship and what I've learned from you directly, Michaela, um, is what influenced us to then choose these light and bright spaces, these light gray wood textures, and this sort of outdoor element that's open and very, very inviting, I hope, anyway, if somebody was to come into this space for any sort of educational programming. So thank you, Michaela. There's a great deal more to this conversation, which I really hope to explore at a later date with you in our archives programming for the Afterville Archive Hour, the radio show. But for now, I would like to invite the audience to present us with any questions they may have. So does anybody have anything they would like to ask Michaela about the education space? Anybody at all? Questions, comments? Oh, yeah,
I would like to
Jordan.
chime in very quickly, if I may. I just want to say that to sort of extend what Michaela had described as a welcoming space and through the decolonization lens, for me, this is such a deeply contemplative space. It really invites, I'm a degree librarian just like you are and just like Michaela is, and yet this is a really evocative space for me. It seems weird to say this in a virtual reality space, but it's simultaneously terrestrial and ethereal at the same time, and it really just for me, I remember the first time I was in here, it really just blew me away, and I think it's such a marvelous space, and it's really the type of environment that I think can challenge really deep and probing conversations and questions. And so I applaud this space, and I think it's really something that should be sought after in a lot of spaces.
Oh, outstanding. That warms my heart to hear that from your colleague. You went to library school together, and to know that what we attempted to accomplish through what I learned with Michaela is manifesting for you, Jordan, as an LAS professional yourself. That really helps to drive home that we're doing what we need to do at this moment in time, because things always change, right? So did anybody else have any questions, anything they wanted to ask? Lonnie, did you have something you wanted to say? Oh, come close,
Yeah.
Lonnie. Go ahead. Yeah,
Okay.
come on up and give us a question.
Yeah, I was just really thinking about the decolonization of archives and what that could look like. Like, could you imagine a space where it would evoke the landscape of maybe a particular Native American tribe, and then you could pull up documents that discuss that multimedia things as you were within that landscape, but will give you the affinity for appreciating the space, the ecology, um, that these documents inhabit. Is that close to the mark?
Yeah.
What you envision?
For me personally, in capturing everything that I could for this build, like I said before, it's super important to all of the pioneers, as I understand it, to document and acknowledge what was here before we came. And so I've got the call out for any sort of documentation that anybody happens to come across. We come across a lot when we're building a new building. You go to dig for a new foundation and you never know what you're going to find back there. And so that's how we found some of the things that we found so far. Down in the block down area, you'll find tools for logging. You'll find there's like this little container that they found that had these personal letters that one of the loggers wrote. And then there's postcards. There's also a trades manual for learning the dialect of the local indigenous folks. And it is our intention to seek out a way to further build out what we can know about the people that were here. And so, yeah, definitely. Thank you, Lonnie. It's a very important topic. I don't know, Michaela, if you have anything you want to speak to about the importance of that, but definitely, Lonnie, keep checking back and see what's here.
Thank you.
Yeah, I
Appreciate it.
appreciate your question too, and I agree with what Dione said. Maybe one thing that Dione and we had also like a little bit discussed is, I mean, the advantage of a space like this that isn't static, like most of our library spaces, is that you can, use the walls, that you can use the space to create different spaces. You're not left with one static space and has to look the same for every group of people that comes in, for every exhibit that comes in. You can tailor it much more like a physical space. So I think this is also the great advantage of this space and all the tools and the technology that we have at hand to do this.
So true. We have so much freedom. Did that answer your question, Lonnie?
Yeah, because I feel like it feels very nurturing here.
Oh,
So an archive that nourishes my soul. So thank you.
oh, absolutely. That makes us feel good to hear that. All right. Did anybody else have any questions or comments they wanted to add? Yeah,
Yes, I have
Nike.
one.
Hi. Yay.
Hi. In the industry that you have, how do you feel that people are going to accept virtual spaces like this? I think traditionally it can feel like they're two very dynamically opposed type industries that, someone like Dione is very uniquely to bring together.
Mm-hmm. Is that directed at all of us or Michaela?
Oh,
Because I
everybody.
haven't. Yeah, everybody. Okay, so I'll answer, and if anybody else has anything, please do comment. It was just yesterday. We've got Dana out here in the crowd. She sent me this article about public librarianship and how there's a use of VR in the libraries, making VR headsets available to teens. Well, basically anybody who comes into the library. And I said, how meta is it that a teen in a physical library space, maybe it's LA County Library, maybe they're in West Hollywood, they walk into the library, they have the ability to get on headset. So they're standing in a physical library space in a headset, and they can potentially make their way to Afterville and find their way back here to Afterville Archives in the community center, and then access a real true collection of artifacts that document how it is that this community came to be and the process that was used to make it happen, and any sort of fun narrative that we've also put on it that's a little bit creative, and so it's just super meta, and I just thought that was super timely. But I think that what there couldn't be anything more validating for me personally than to have one of my best library school friends and one of my library school mentors. I did my first internship in special collections with Michaela. For them to be here, for them to accept my attempt at their buy-in to what it is I'm doing here, and for them to commit to future programming that is going to be happening in this actual education space. Actual library programming will be happening here. We are going to be coming in. We are going to be looking at actual digitized rare materials and not so rare materials, and they're here, and they've committed to it. And so for me, I feel like it's validating. I was really concerned that I was never going to get it to happen, and I think I managed to. So anybody else have anything to say about that?
If I may just chime in really quickly, I wanted to say that there's always people who are not open to something like this, but I think overall, and this pandemic has also shown us that things like Zoom teaching, remote teaching, and VR, they are also democratizing access to these kinds of opportunities. Traveling to an archive in another country or so, not everybody, again, it comes down to privilege and access to resources and so on. Not everybody can do it, but hop on VR and join us here and learn about, artifacts or whatever you're going to present in this space, Dion. It's easy. It's a much lower barrier, and I think this is terrific. And this is what libraries want to accomplish. They want to, improve accessibility to the knowledge and the information and the resources that they have. So I think it's a great tool, and I'm pretty sure when Second Life came around, lots of librarians jumped onto Second Life, and libraries, academic libraries in the US and elsewhere, they're also exploring VR. So I have high hopes that this will be greatly be used.
Outstanding. Okay, well, just one last call for anybody else that has anything, and thank you for asking that question, 9Key. Otherwise, okay, so I think that we're going to wrap up what we're doing here in the learning space. If you would like to make your way down the hall, we have just enough time for me to show you the children's space, where we have a replica of Zephyrs used to transport folks between Afterville and Cascadia City and a number of other origami worlds, like the OAS Earthrise. The trustees at Origami Air so graciously donated this artifact in the hopes that children visiting the Afterville archives will find a space for themselves to relax, read a good book, and perhaps even dream a little about the places they imagine they can go. To help them along, there are a number of imagine-provoking features here, including the Hall of the Milky Way. The end of the tour is just atop the rainbow stairs, where you are invited to press your nose against the window, gaze into the horizon of Cascadia City, and imagine. What could you build in the metaverse? How could you embody your identity? Who would be your community? And where would your collective imagination take you? I would like to extend a special thank you to my colleagues, Jordan Taylor and Michaela Ullmann, for their contributions to the archive and for joining us here today. Also, thank you, the audience, for joining me today on this public tour of the Afterville archives. Until next time, fly safe and imagine well. Thank you, my friends.
Thank you, Fidget, for this wonderful kickoff to the week of archives in the metaverse. We'll see all of you back here on Wednesday.